Hello, fellow duelists and collectors. Today I'm very excited because this is probably my favorite deck that I will put up, unless I revise it later and it might be better, but this will essentially be my favorite deck and what I am most proud of or happy to use or show you. So I'll get right into it. It's, as you read in the title, my best or ideal Blackwing deck, and I think this is something, since you're coming to my channel, you deserve to see. I'll get right into it. First, one Dark Armed, pretty obviously because this is a dark deck and you want to be able to use the dark attribute to your advantage, and he's a really good card, so I'd recommend him. Okay, so we got 2 Chris the Crack of Dawns. You could run 3, but it really comes down to preference with you. I choose to run 2 because I'm trying to get more of a balance between tuners and non-tuners and effects of the monsters in my deck. So you could run 3, but I personally run 2. I do 3 Bora because specifically its piercing damage means that your opponent will basically have no option but to accept damage from you unless they have an effect that says otherwise. But he's really good with Colute because with even 1 Colute, his attack goes to 3100, which breaks most defenses. But he's definitely a good card for the piercing damage and his special summon, and is a 4-star. So that's good. 1 Zephyros the Elite because his effect was essentially so good they had to put once per duel on it. So bringing him back from the grave, which you usually do with Black Whirlwind, bringing to your hand, is definitely a good combo, and he's a very useful card. 3 Colutes. This is what I would classify as one of the few original hand traps, along with Honest, DD Crow, and whatnot. But this is the sense of fear that gets instilled when facing a Blackwing deck generally, where your monster's attack could go up by 14, 28, or even 42 if you have all 3 in your hand, 100 attack points. So I think it's good to have 3, especially for OTKs or just for tricking your opponent, faking them out, so to speak. 3 Gales. Yes, I actually do use 3. I think Gale has always been essentially the best Blackwing, and not extra deck Blackwings, but the best Blackwing by itself. It can special summon, it can have the attack and defense of an opponent's monster, and it's a tuner 3-star. So it's definitely a good card to have. And since the inception of Blackwing's introduction to the game, I think it's the best Blackwing, and has been. Okay, Blizzard the Far North. I use 1 Blizzard because it's really good for extra deck summoning, but it's not as universally useful as it was at the time of it being very popular, running 3 in the deck, because there's more diversity with the Blackwings, and with that you don't need the old ones as much because newer ones have better abilities, such as Pinocchi the Waxing Moon. Now, Pinocchi is a newer Blackwing that has a great effect, which I think goes really well with Black Whirlwind, but also works well in general, where you get to add a Blackwing from your deck to your hand, and since this entire deck is 4 or below, it works, but you basically get to start the cycle over with Black Whirlwind. So if you add monsters with Black Whirlwind from your deck to your hand, then they have to gradually have lower attack than the monster you summoned. But with him, you get to reset that and just say grab Chris or Bora and start the whole cycle over again and add lower and lower monsters. Like Breeze. Breeze is in this deck. I actually brought him back into the deck for a specific reason, because there's a lot of draw power and a lot of add power with Black Whirlwind. He's also a 3-star tuner, which you could easily replace him for Steam the Cloak, but that's really up to your preference. I do Breeze the Zephyr because I like the possibility of randomly drawing him with a lure and summoning him, but also that he can be, so like if you draw him with a lure and you haven't even summoned a Blackwing, he can automatically special summon. And if you have other Blackwings who can special summon, you get other special summons off. You can Ixie, Link, or Synchro summon before you've even normal summoned. So that can be a really good combo and really helpful. Or you may not even normal summon that turn. Steam the Cloak is one of the better Blackwings that's been introduced recently, and it adds the token, which is really helpful for links and the extra deck in general, so he's a good card. I only run him at 1, but that's just because I don't want to get him too often because he is a weaker card. But You could definitely run them at 2, even 3. And Hamat in the Dust. Hamat in the Dust is a very useful card in terms of extra deck, synchro primarily summoning, where you, for the majority of the tuners in this deck, you have 3-star tuners, so you can add their level to his to get a 8-star monster, or you can just tune him with a 3-star and get a 5-star monster. So it really comes down to getting the variety of choosing your extra deck synchro monster specifically. And it can be special summon. Black Whirlwind is the most essential card for Blackwings. The fact that it's back to 3 from the ban list and has been for a while now is only more reason for Blackwing players to get back into the game. It lets you add a Blackwing from your deck to your hand that has less attack than a Blackwing you just normal summoned. So it can be a very helpful card, and the reason I run 3 is because you want it on your first hand, essentially. Similar to Allure of Darkness, I run 3 of it because you want it in your first hand, and it gives you more draw power, and every monster in this deck's dark, so... And the way I have it ratioed is you have a 50% chance of drawing a dark monster, and if you draw 2 cards, your chances increase. So it's a really good card to have. It's back at 3 from the ban list, and I would definitely recommend it for Blackwings because the more draw power, the merrier. You want to be able to get through everything you can, generally. Okay, 2 Mystical Space Typhoons because I didn't want to go out and buy Twin Twister, and I didn't want to buy a bunch of packs to try to get Twin Twister. Mystical Space Typhoon is a cheap substitute that works well and has no cost about it, and it's a quick play, so it is a good card to have. I still highly recommend it in decks today, and I think people should take it more seriously, especially if you gauge your opponent and know how people can be deceptive or can be blatantly obvious, and so you just have to try to read your opponent and choose what's logical. Anyway, Pot of Desire, I would only recommend 1 because if you use more than 1, you have a much, much higher chance of banishing essential cards that you would really want from your deck, and or cards that you would just need later in game, and it's not worth the price of getting 2 cards to have more than 1 of these in your deck. 4 cards is not worth 20 cards, but 2 cards may be worth 10 in certain scenarios. So it is an okay card by my standard, but not more than 1. Castle Call is a really good card because you get to substitute a Winged Beast on the field for 1 in the extra deck, so that can be very helpful, especially since it's a quick play. Dark Eruption is a great card since majority of the Blackwings in this deck have less than 1500 attack, so it's definitely really good, especially because it has no cost. Forbidden Chalice. Now this card can be good, it can be bad, and it can be less than useful in certain situations, but for the majority it's very useful. You could either use it to boost your monster's attack, hinder your opponent's monster's effect, or do both to either player for your gain or your opponent's loss. Soul Charge is a very standard card today. You pay 1,000 for each monster that you bring back from the grave. You can bring up to 5, which is incredible. So it's a good card to have and helps with endgame sort of play, I think. Monster Reborn is one of the OG cards, no cost, great card to have. Get a monster from either grave, really good. And now that it's back, I think a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players will be joining the game again. Along with Regeki, I think it's a beautiful card. It's a staple, works in any deck, and it's a very easily substituted card for an extra deck or a side deck. Or I mean, yeah, just a side deck, sorry. But it's no cost, destroy your opponent's monsters, and that's a great effect. But you, again, for your preferences, you could substitute it out for something that could be more helpful or useful or towards your choice of style play. Anyway, Delta Crow Anti-Reverse, I think, is phenomenal because you can activate it from your hand if you have exactly 3 Blackwings, and it could destroy 5 Spell and Traps, but it really destroys all face-down Spell and Traps, so it's not good for continuous ones, but continuous Spell and Traps are definitely more rare in the terms of Spell and Traps used today, but still can be a pain in the ass, so that's why the MSTs are in there, to compensate for the Delta Crows that don't get them, along with Icarus Attack. Icarus Attack can destroy those face-up spell or traps that are continuous, and it can destroy monsters, but the free reign you get by destroying 2 cards of your choice is so versatile that I would highly recommend using 1, at least, Icarus Attack in a Blackwing deck. I use 2 because I think it's better. Finally, I use 1 Black Sonic because the possibility of banishing all your opponent's monsters can be extremely rewarding and very damaging to your opponent. So you could switch out Black Sonic for A, the price that it is, and B, the strategy you do, but I run one, and I don't think you really need more than one because it's conditional, but it is a good card. It is definitely a good card. Now, the extra deck. Links are Firewall Dragon. I mean, it's limited and it's a staple in all decks, so I shouldn't really have to explain how good it is. Decode Talker, again, a staple in a lot of decks, and just a good card to have all around. And mainly, I like him the most because he has the 2 arrows opening 2 zones in your main monster zone, so he's the initial link monster you go for. 1 Trigate Wizard, because he has a really good effect, you know, and he's a staple again. But he comes in the I think it's a starter deck, or I'm pretty sure starter deck, and he's just a good card to have, staple, so I would recommend having him. Or, I mean, you could substitute for Borreload or all these other link monsters that there are nowadays, but it's really up to your preference. Evil Storm Ouroboros has 3 possible effects and a decent attack, so I would definitely recommend having him. And you have a decent amount of 4 stars, so he definitely can be summoned. Zero Fine negates effects, so that can be very helpful in certain situations, and it is a winged beast, so that's also good. It could be used for Icarus or Castle Call, you know. Same with this, Castel the Sky Blaster Musketeer. He is a winged beast, and he has a really good effect, and it really comes down to your preference, like, of which monster you prefer to use. Since he has the same attack as Ice Beast Zero Fine, it's up to you. But, again, if you need certain monsters in certain situations, you have them, or you could switch them out, you know, it's up to your preference. 1 Onimaru the Divine Thunder, because you do actually get the chance to summon him, so he can be really helpful. My 8-star I chose is Stardust, and I only have 1 8-star. And definitely because there's so much destruction these days, I want the protection, so I chose Stardust personally. That's Raikiri. He, you know, destroying monsters is a really good effect and can be very useful. But I think that it's great that they came out with Chidori also, because he can do the attack, he can do the destruction, which means you have the possibility of countering your opponent on both fronts, which is really good. And then Dark Strike Fighter, because that gives you the added bonus for synchros of dealing effect damage to your opponent, which can be very helpful in tight spots. So, especially with Dark Armed. He is great with Dark Armed, and he's back from the ban list, so I'm happy to hear that and using him again. 1 Clearwing Synchro Dragon. He definitely has a good effect for, you know, like negation, and all the encompassing effects he has is good, and he has a decent attack, so I think he's good to have, and I would recommend him in today's format, especially since his price went down relatively recently, and so he's a decent card to get. Brionac is, I shouldn't even have to explain it, but it's a phenomenal card that lets you send any number of cards from your hand to the grave to return the same number of cards from your opponent's field to their hand, which can change games. It can be end game play. It can totally ruin your opponent's strategy and make you win the duel on the turn you use him, so he's very good. Graham the Shining Star, you need him mostly because he is the only synchro out of the new Blackwings that does not make himself a tuner monster. So he is vitally essential in summoning Onimaru. But other than that, he's got a decent effect, and I would say you need to have one of him in your deck. Sahaya the Rainstorm, really good effect, especially because it needs the good effect since its attack's only 1500. But I would highly recommend using this. Again, it helps in summoning Onimaru. So I think you should have them. And that's it for the extra deck. For the side deck, these are just cards you could run. This isn't even actually my side deck, but these are cards that I sort of contemplated on putting in the real deck that I'll show you. 1 Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend, because he has a pretty darn good effect, and I like it about him. 1 Infernity Doom Dragon, because again, I mean, it's not that often you'll have 0 cards in your hand, but in the case that you do, he can be helpful, so you could switch him out for Stardust if you want destruction of your opponent more than you want protection of yourself. And then I use Obsidian Hawk Joe, because honestly, he has a great effect, and he has a decent attack, so he's sort of the competition with Armor Master, and he's really good in today's format, but I actually just chose not to run him because my gameplay style is more focused about getting Onimaru out or keeping the field abundantly filled with monsters. Goyo Guardian obviously is a very good staple, 2800 attack. It's back off the ban list, so I would recommend using it if you have it. And then I actually forgot this dude's name, but oh yeah, Nothung. Nothung is really good, and I would recommend having him. But again, that's just not my exact specific style of play right now. But you could definitely run him. I would recommend it. Catastor, really good when you're facing a non-dark deck. He's essentially almost a trump card for your opponent to try to get over. That is really difficult for them. Vortex the Whirlwind, he is a winged beast 5-star and can be very helpful, but he doesn't fit the Blackwing criteria necessarily, but he has a good effect, and he's a 5-star synchro that's a winged beast, so he is good. And then you could run Orochi, but I just chose not to. Like, you could, I don't know if he's good enough to run today, but he is a good card to have, and if you don't have the crazy specific criteria of my deck, you could totally run him. I would recommend it. He's a good card. So that is it for my deck profile for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you hate the phrase smash that like button, why don't you give me a like in this video, because I hate it too. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. Thank you.